Okay, hello everybody. The three ladies are back again, and we're discussing a topic that we are very familiar with. We didn't have to do any private research. We didn't have to look up any books or look up on the internet. The topic today is motherhood, and we're all mothers, so we're sharing from our experiences. I'd like to welcome today Eve and Victoria. We're all back again, and as Victoria likes to call us, this is our version of Loose Women, and we're here to discuss motherhood. Thank you for watching. Right, we've got a few pointers that we're going to go through. The first one is, before we were mothers, what did we actually think about motherhood? Before we were mothers, what did we actually think about motherhood? Was it something we looked forward to or dreaded, didn't want, couldn't wait to experience? How did we feel?
I didn't want to be a mother.
Okay.
I didn't see myself as very maternal. And the person I'd met, who was my husband of my daughters, I knew he wanted children, and I said, if we're going to have children, we're going to have them. I'm going to have them when I'm very young, and that was it. Done, finished, and that's how I saw it.
Okay. All right.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. That's fine. The interesting thing is, I felt the same way.
Gosh, I thought we might all be in different camps, but truthfully, I've never really shared this before. But as I was growing up, I mean, I thought one day I'd find someone, church girl, get married, all that kind of thing. But I wasn't an earth mother type at all. I liked children. I used to be a Sunday school teacher, but I like to teach the teenagers, and they tried to make me teach the little tots, the little ones they were pressurizing me, and I was like, no, I'm not going to do it. And I was quite young at the time, but I had no interest in trying to communicate with little children and not have a conversation that I'd want to have. Not that I had anything against them, but I just wasn't that type at all. So no, and also I had well, not an irrational fear of pain, but I had a fear of pain because I've got a low pain threshold. So I'll talk a bit more about that a bit later. But no, before I had children, it was not something that it was on my bucket list, as it were, for life as a young person, and that I looked forward to. So no. I know my daughter's probably going to watch this at some point, but I hope they take it the right way. Anyway, too late now.
Well, I'm beginning to think that this is quite a common feeling, because when I was a teenager, I wasn't keen on motherhood either. And in fact, when I was at school, and they show us this video of childbirth, and you see the pain the mother's got to go through. From then I decided, no, not me. I'm not going to go through that. So no, I wasn't really keen. And even when I did get married at age 23, I still wasn't keen on motherhood. And I discussed with my husband and said, oh yeah, okay, 5 or 6 years time. So when 5 or 6 years time was over, he said, okay, let's have the baby now. Let's do the deed. So to keep him happy, I did. And to be honest, I'm glad that I did, because right now I would not be without my children. So I'm glad that I did. It worked out fine in the end. But initially, certainly as we were growing up, I wasn't keen on children. So I'm beginning to think maybe a lot of children, teenagers feel the same way. But I don't know. I keep hearing that there are children playing with dolls and wanting to have their own babies and can't wait till they have their own babies. And I was never like that. So I thought I was in the minority. But if the three of us all felt the same, well, that must be so different.
I played with my dolls. We had dolls. I love my dolls. I took them as dolls. I never thought of them turning into babies one day. They were dolls I played with and curled their hair and cut their hair and all kinds of things. But I never thought that one day this would be a child I'd look after. So yeah, I didn't think of it in that way at all. It just wasn't something
Yeah.
that came in like that. And probably, I mean, you know, I didn't have any children until I got married. I don't know if we're going to get to that point, but I just want to say that I got pregnant practically on honeymoon, as it were, and just over 9.5 months from when I got married, or around that time, I had my first child. That marriage broke up, and then I was married again many years after I had the first marriage, but I got married again, and then it was about a year and a half, nearly 2 years after I was married, that I had my other child, and that was 12 years later after my first child. So there was quite a bit of a gap between them. I'm quite thankful for that, really. That was quite a gap between them. But so really, yes, maybe I'd be like you, Dawn, that I'd be negotiating, saying, you know, for my first marriage, saying, I don't know, maybe I'll leave for maybe 3 or 4 years time, you know, and then that might have gone on for a while, yeah. So maybe it's a good thing it was just kind of out of my hands and just happened at that time. Yes, but same thing. I'm just so glad for my children. I would not be without them at all.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so what about
I
pregnancy?
don't want any more right now, just to say, please, no more, no more.
Okay. How about pregnancy? How did you find pregnancy, Victoria?
Yeah, that's very interesting. I've got 3 girls. I left home at 16, which I think is part of the context. I bought my first house at 18, and I was married at 19. So pregnancy, my first child, and also I'm very matter of fact type person. So the pregnancy was, I suppose if you put it into context, was horrendous, but I never saw it as horrendous. I just thought it was meant to be, and I just kind of put up with it, and that was it. Extremely anemic, everything else, and it would be seen in these days now, I suppose, as horrendous. The second one was they would see as a dream. All the surgeons, everything were there, and they were so scared about what happened with the first. And then the third one was a bit similar to the first one.
Oh,
That was fine. I mean, you know, it's life. I mean, you know, it's just that's what life is. So yeah, I mean, 3 girls. The first one was tough. From the day I was pregnant to the day I gave birth, it was tough. The second one was fine. The third one was the same. From the day I was pregnant to the day I got. But you know, pregnancy is pregnancy. It's not one of the ones where I was okay. I suppose it wasn't something where I was skipping along and making daisy chains and all those types of things. When my first one, I was knocking down walls with a sledgehammer and sorting out the garden and all that type of stuff, and in a boiler suit, you know. So that's what I was doing. So it wasn't kind of, you know, and also I was adopted. So I was adopted. My mother was, she adopted me from the age of 58. So I had an older mother, very upper class mother, didn't really get involved with stuff. And yeah, so what can I say? I was a young mother and just basically got on with it.
Did you have support during your pregnancy and when the child was younger from your parents, from your mum?
Yeah, my adopted mum. Yeah, I mean, that's another story. I mean, that's she did what she could do,
Okay,
which was fine. Yeah, I went back to work. I was back at work within. For Charlotte, I was 8 weeks. Went back at work at 8 weeks. She was 8 weeks old. With Monique, I went back at 2 weeks old. And with Chantel, and with Chantel, who was the oldest, I went back at I went back around about 6 months.
Okay.
Yeah.
Amazing. Wow. Well, for me, I was 22 when I had my first child. My mother had died when I was 12, so I'd missed having her there in my life, generally anyway, all the things I went through. But certainly when you start to have children, it's something you hope that your mother could be there, that they were supportive. So I didn't know what to expect. But it's how you carry yourself as well, isn't it? I mean, I remember, I think it was about 3 months gone or 4 months gone, and then myself and my ex-husband were carting some wardrobe thing up the stairs. You know, I was at the lower end and he was sort of, and I think back now, I'm thinking, good Lord, I mean, anything could have happened at that time. But I don't know, it was the 80s, and thought, just let's just do it. But now, if I was had my time again, I would not recommend anybody does that. But you're trying to be sort of normal in a not a normal situation. It's a natural situation. There's nothing normal about it, you know, very significant, you know, nausea and all the kind of thing. But and I had two big babies, and the thing I remember about being pregnant is that I spent the whole time with my first pregnancy not telling anybody, but actually I just kept thinking, how is this baby going to come out of me? I know down there that hole is not very big, and babies are quite big. So for the whole time I was in this, just, I can't even explain it. It was psychological trauma of how it was going to emerge, how I know that I had a very low pain threshold, how was I going to go through it, how was I going to get to the side, as it was with my first pregnancy. When in the end, they induced me, I just was sort of hiding from them, and then one day I had to go in for I had to go in for antenatal meeting. There was a different nurse, and she goes, "Oh, you're way past your due date. Right, coming on Sunday, we're going to induce you." I didn't want that to happen. Anyway, long story short, I had 27 and a half hours of labour. I'm trying to get that baby out. Then they had to move me to another hospital from where I was. And she was £9 5 ounces, and she was heavy. They didn't even realise when they goes, "Oh, about £8." And I remember to this day when they put her on the scale and the needle just went whoosh, and it was 9.5, and they were like, "What?" They were really shocked. But you know, the pregnancy, it was difficult. You know, if someone who didn't know about, hadn't read up, you know, they give that book, don't you? They give those books, don't they? You know, you read through it, and they're quite, you know, sterile, really. When I had my second child, 12 years later, I read up more. I wanted to, this is crazy. I'm saying this now, so please don't think I'm crazy, but I'm just saying it because it sounds crazy. For someone who has a low pain threshold, I wanted to have a natural birth. I know it makes no sense whatsoever, but I decided that, I thought, let me try and see how much of the pain I can bear. You know, I was going through just with gas and air or something like that, and I did actually do that. But I did a lot of praying beforehand, because I said, God, please, and can it just be less than 10 hours? Can it be a girl? Can it be a girl? And can it have a small head? That was my prayer. Those three things from my, I kid you not, this is the truth now, because we're here to talk truth. And actually, they had to induce me again this time, because she had tachycardia, which means the heart was racing a lot. So the heart was racing. So she was tachycardic. So they took me down to induce me. I was in hospital because I was bleeding. I was shedding. So they took me in anyway, because as long as they stay home, no, come in. And they took me down at 12 noon. And, you know, the heart was racing and all the rest of it. And then they wheeled me in somewhere. Literally, she was born 9 hours and 45 minutes later, which met my 10-hour prayer. She had a small head, because when they measure them, as the health visitor does, don't they come round, on the chart, she was quite a big baby, but she had this small head. I was like, Lord, thank you for that, because they had to struggle to get her out anyway. And it was a girl. So I was like, all the things that I wanted happened, actually, apart from the trauma of the birth itself, because I tore, because it was a traumatic birth. And when she was born, they had to work on her because she wasn't breathing as she should be. There was something wrong. They were giving her heart massage across the room. All these things were going on. And her APGAR score, which is the score which shows the health of the baby, was 4 out of 9, which wasn't good either. But anyway, that was traumatic. But everything I prayed for, I got. But I actually did do gas and air. I was really good. I was doing this gas and air. I don't know why I felt I had to do that. There was just this thing about being brave. You have a baby and you be brave. And that's what I felt on myself I had to do. I felt, because, you know, I didn't have an epidural last time, but I did have pethidine, you know. But I just felt I had to be brave. And I took it almost all the way with the gas and air. And then when things got screeching bad, and it was hours later, you know, they found some dusty little bit of pethidine in the back of a cupboard. I said, I've had that before. I want that again. And then they found it and they injected me and I felt better. But
Yeah.
there was just this thing I can't understand, and whether anybody else understands it, that I had to be brave in doing this birth thing. And I honestly don't know where that came from, but that was very much something I felt that had to happen. Now I think it's a bit, I don't understand it. Yeah.
Okay. Well, my first pregnancy, I think, was quite average. You know, I felt sickly for the first 3 months or so, and then from the 4th month onwards, I was more or less okay. I think I was only sick once after I'd had a pastrami sandwich, which I'd never had before. I've never had since, but I just happened to be hungry, and we stopped the car. I popped into the shop and got it, and that was the only time I was ill for that. And I continued working till about, I think, 7.5 months or so. The baby came about 4 days early. We were trying to get the baby to be born in August because I didn't want the child to be the eldest in the year. So I didn't want it to be September born. So we tried to do what we could to try to get the baby to come early, but, you know, it wasn't happening, you know.
No, you didn't.
we couldn't make it hurry up. So one time we went walking around Fairlock Waters. I don't know if any of you know Barkingside. There's a big lake there, and we walked all the way around it. I was there in my big tummy, and by the time we finished going around the lake, I started to feel a little bit odd. And before we'd gone around the lake, we'd bought a hot dog. And I thought, oh, maybe it's the hot dog that's coming up on me, you know. So went back home and was relaxing, watching a film, and then the contractions started, and then I thought, oh, let's finish watching this film first, and then we can go. So went to the hospital, took ages, had it as a natural birth. I did ask for epidural and all that, but they seemed to say, oh no, there's not enough time. So I think it was about 8 hours later that the baby arrived. So that was the first birth. The second birth, that was reasonably good as well, in terms of pregnancy, that is. The pregnancy was reasonably good. But the birth, this time I got them to give me an epidural. I said, oh, I need an epidural. That was what I really wanted. And so I had the epidural, and then I didn't feel anything for a few hours. And I was sitting there looking around the room going, you know, just having fun. No pain. I'm here in labor, no pain. But apparently it extends the labor time, doesn't it? So because I wasn't feeling anything, I wasn't able to help with the contraction. So they made it wear off a bit. And then I began to feel everything. And then it felt like, oh no, the pain. Anyway, thank the Lord, they both came out well, both girls. 9-year difference between them. And it works out quite good if you are a parent and you have a good difference in age, because one can help with the other, you know, and the older one gets to learn more about babies. And so for me, it worked out fine. But I understand people who want to have it one after the other, 1 year or 2 years after the other, so they grow up together. I understand that too, because the kind of bond that siblings would have if they're closer in ages is a bit more difficult when they're further apart.
My two oldest were 1 year between them, just this 1 year. The first one I had forceps. It was. I mean, I don't talk about it, but it was. One could argue that it was a very difficult situation.
Quite traumatic.
Yeah, and so I had forceps, and Chantal had a where the forceps caught her eye. She had a bruise under her eye for months and months. And my third one, I really wanted to have a water birth. That's what I wanted. I really wanted a water birth, but I wasn't able to have it because I had that, in pregnancy where they identify that you've got this particular, it's like a virus, and if you give birth without the antibiotics, your child can end up with blindness and everything else. So I wasn't allowed to have that neither. So so my youngest one, who's 17 years difference to my other children, which is okay actually, because some of my friends had their first at the same age as I had my last. So because I was so young anyway before, and so yeah, I mean, yeah. But my biggest thing is I was anemic, very, very anemic, and I didn't know until about 8 years ago that the reason why I'm so anemic is I've got thalassemus? Thalassemus. Yeah, I've got that. So no matter, because I used to have injections every other day. I'd have iron injections.
Oh wow!
And do but I didn't live in London.
Okay.
At all. So you know, they weren't used to black people really.
Okay.
So they're fighting with this iron every day, but nothing was going to happen because it's just iron.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Okay.
hey ho.
All right. Now, I want us to talk about the first month of motherhood, but also incorporate into that whether it changed the relationship with our husband or our partner, either before the child came or after the child came. So the first month of the child being in your life, first month of motherhood, what was that like? And did it change relationship with your husband or partner?
Wow. I had postnatal depression in my first pregnancy. I didn't realize at the time what it was. It was quite severe. It went on for many, many months. I was not in what I would call, I was not in a supportive marriage. I was in a bad marriage. And so I felt blamed for a lot of things. We won't go into details of that, but I was blamed for a lot of things. I took that on. And then I had this baby. You know, I was actually off for 4 months because I didn't have enough service in the job that I'd gone into. So I could only have about 4 months of maternity leave. However, with my second child, I had a full 9 months because I had lots of service. I was in medical government, had lots of service. But I had postnatal depression. The first month was, for me personally and emotionally, was horrendous. From the time that I was in the hospital and I came home, I had an infection at the hospital. I had a urinary tract infection. They couldn't find my results. I was in there for about 10 days. When I came out, I was in a lot of pain. I had this child. My pelvic floor was shot to pieces. I just felt not who I was. So the first month was difficult. I find it hard. I know that I wasn't a mother person because I found it hard to establish breastfeeding. So my big baby, who was very hungry, she's still like that now. She likes to eat it. Yeah, she is. She still eats the same way. She likes it. So because the breastfeeding was very difficult, I had to, and this is something I don't think they talk enough about, this issue check you can have with breastfeeding. So if we can be quite honest, I had a lot of issues. I had one of my nipples that was just like it was almost broken off because it was sore, it was in terrible state, so I couldn't feed as I wanted to. So my ex at the time decided, right, I'm gonna go and get, you know, some baby milk. And so he got baby milk, and so she started to have bottle. Then I started to give her breastfeeding, but she had breast bottle and breast at that time. Whereas with my second child, I breastfed her for 9 months. I said to myself that I'll breastfeed her as long as I needed to. Her appetite was different. She was 8 pounds 11. She was big, but her appetite was different. I didn't have postnatal depression with her. She you know, I had always said to myself, if I'm breastfeeding and the child bites me, that's going to be it. Just bites me once and the breastfeeding is over. As it happened, she bit me once. And I just like, okay, you get one more chance. She's about 8 months then, and then she bit me again, and that was it. It was over, but she's already on bottle. But, you know, I didn't feel my body was my own. And the first time round, I had a lot of issues in terms of weight. I don't know, after I got to a certain amount of stones on a weight, it just stopped weighing me anyway. So I don't know what I went up to. Whereas with my second one, it was smoother in the fact that I had her in May. By the time July came, I was practically back to my pre-pregnancy weight, and that felt better in myself around that. But the postnatal depression was something I wasn't prepared for at all, and I also thought that it would come back the second time, so it didn't. But that first month is the most bewildering, otherworldly kind of thing. And then you've got this baby that's helpless, that's depending on you. When they're crying, it's a cry. I don't know if they're wet. I don't know if they need a bottle. I don't know if they're saying hello. I don't know what they're doing, because it all to me as a new mother, it sounded the same. But certainly over time, and I don't know what it is, something happens to you, mystically happens to you, you start to be able to interpret which one it likely is. And I do find myself when I see other people's babies, I'm saying, oh, that sounds like they're wet. Oh, that sounds like they're hungry. I don't know where the heck that comes from, but somehow I'm interpreting baby language. But at the time, they were just crying and they wouldn't stop crying. And one day I remember my oldest one, she cried all day from about 12 o'clock. And she cried the whole day. I hugged her, I fed her, I did everything. I cried, she was crying. I don't know what it was. The whole thing was a mess all day. I was at home on my own. And then it got to 5:30 and Neighbours came on the TV. And as soon as the Neighbours music started playing, she just went, oh, 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 and fell asleep, because she was used to hearing Neighbours in the room and all the rest of it. I don't watch it now, but at that time I did. And I thought, if I just played Neighbours, she would have gone to sleep. I didn't know that, but I was there, really, really wrung out of 6 hours of just non-stop crying. So it's a very troubling time, I think, that first month. And hey, maybe other women can say it's a refreshing, lovely time, wonderful experience, but it really drew a lot out of me, literally, that first month. I would never want to repeat that again.
Okay. Victoria.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'm very mechanical. So no, let me use those words. That's not the right word. I'm very strategic. So I saw my my motherhood as very businesslike. And so my first month was very kind of, this is what I need to do. I had a rocking chair, and I'd sit in my rocking chair. The what do you call it, the midwife, whoever it was, would come round and she'd tell me that my daughter should be awake and she should be feeding. And I said, well, she's sleeping, and that's the way it is. Now, don't forget, I'm faced a young 20-year-old with this little baby, with my house and everything else. And yeah, I mean, I was fine. I mean, none of my friends had babies. None of my friends had babies. It was just me. I did go to the National Birthing Association, the National Childbirth, no, not childbirth, breastfeeding group. I went to that a few times to just network with them, but they're all kind of older women. But also I was okay with breastfeeding, so and listening to them talking nonsense wasn't really something I wanted to do. Within the first month of having Chantal, I was back at college, doing some qualifications. And so I used to what I used to do is, I would go to college in the evening, which was in Canterbury at the time, and he was at college in the daytime doing a course, and I was doing this advanced course. And so I'd take my pram and we'd meet across the train. So I'd meet him in Canterbury and I'd pass the pram to him, and I'd go onto the college and I'd stay on till 10 o'clock at night, and then I'd come back. So I'd do that twice a week. But I also was in a house, as I said to you, I was in my second house. And so it was a semi-detached house. It had lots of work to be done, and I'm somebody who rolls up the sleeves and all that. And so one of the things I said also is that because he wasn't earning that much, I went and got myself a job while she was tiny, and I worked in the nightclub. So I worked in the nightclub in the cashiers. So I'd I think I used to go in at 8:30 or 9 o'clock at night, go to the nightclub until 2 o'clock in the morning. And I'd every penny I earned from that, I put it towards the carpets and all that kind of stuff. So
Wow.
I worked hard in the first month. After having Chantel the first time, after having her, I hemorrhaged really badly. So I was in hospital for about 3 weeks. And because they couldn't stop me bleeding or anything. So, but I just carried on. I was as skinny as anything. Kept, just lost a lot of weight. But so my second child, similar, I suppose. My third child, well, I was with a different man, and the first month I was back in hospital, and so is my daughter back in hospital. So yeah, interesting first months. What can you say? I mean, with my last one, I was well, all of them I'd read. I would never get stressed. It would be my time for reading my books. Sit on the rocking chair and read. And walking. I walked for hours. I loved it, and I walked for hours, walking up and down with the pram, walking through wherever I want to walk, feeding the ducks.
Well, those are things that babies love. They love being rocked. And they love being walked,
Exactly.
They love being in the pram and going out. They love that.
Strategic. So I suppose what I didn't do, I never kind of thought, like when I'm listening to what Eve's saying, I never really sat and thought, oh yes, this, I need to do this. I just it was a very much strategic. My daughters are saying now, you're very businesslike, Mum. I'm very kind of, dun. This is what needs to be done. That's it.
And I think that's the difference, because I do have that side to me, but also I'm quite emotional as well underneath. So my first response around people think would be more emotional, whereas I'm at work, my first response is always not emotional. It's like emotion might come just after. So it's the other way around. So I got into more of a tizzy over things.
I'm completely and utterly, my girls know that I'm completely and utterly detached from my emotions.
Right.
Are you?
Yeah. Definitely.
Okay.
Definitely. Okay. That's another conversation at another time. Not today. Not
we know
today.
ourselves, don't we? We know ourselves. Yeah.
It's to do with trauma. If you go through trauma in life, you learn how to deal with it, and I deal with it because I don't associate with emotions.
Okay. Does that mean that you hardly ever cry?
Exactly.
Oh.
Yes.
Okay.
What does one cry for? Just, you're wasting a load of tears. Exactly, wasting a load of tears.
That's another show, Victoria.
Oh, okay.
I'd say, okay, Dawn, or I'd say, oh, okay, Eve, now you've done all the tears. Okay, so now what do you want to do? Do you want to continue to cry, or do you want to do something about it?
Okay. It's a kind of release, isn't it, though? It's a kind of release, though, sometimes, because you cry if you're upset that something has happened and there's nothing that you can do about it. So your first instinct might just be to have a release, or you might hold it in first, but then after a while, as it begins to build up, the tension builds up, the stress builds up, you might start to cry, and afterwards you might feel better, and then you decide, okay, what am I going to do about it?
Just put some music on. Don't worry about tears. Just put some music on.
Music. Okay. Okay. All right. Well, that's another tip. Put some music on. Well, music worked well for your baby, didn't it, Eve?
It certainly did. It certainly did. And also, they like being driven around in the car. They like being driven in the car. They love that too.
Yes.
So you put them in the car and I wasn't driving at the time myself, but you put them in the car, drive them for a bit. Then you realize after a while, you just can't keep driving around with a baby in the car all the time. But they do love those things. And I guess the thing is as well, Dawn, is in the first month or so, is getting to know your baby, getting to know, about them. And it's that first month is just prior to the time when you see a first smile. Well, it looks like a smile anyway, it could be wind. Around that 5-week thing is where you start to think, oh my gosh, there is a person in there, after this month has gone by, who's got a personality, and there's a smile, and it's like, I thought anyway, when my daughter smiled and she was 5 weeks weeks old, all the pain of what I've gone through in terms of the feeling down on the rest of it, birth, trauma, all the rest of it, it kind of dissipated because, my gosh, there's a little human in here, and they're engaging with me and they're smiling, and wow, and of course they smile more after that and start doing other things. But I think the first month or so, you're not really sure what's going on in there. You make all kinds of assumptions about how clever this child is and whether everything is right. You don't know yet until they start to interact with you and you go, oh, well, okay, yeah, everything's cool, everything's fine, and don't worry, it's fine. And they go along their normal progression from there. But I mean, you got nothing to compare it with. That's the thing.
Yeah, when it's your first, yes.
What about you then, Dawn?
Yeah, well, with my first child, I think the first couple of days, I was a bit upset with the child because I thought this child has caused me so much pain. Because, you know, I was in shock at the amount of pain that I had to go through. And even after the birth, there was still pain. There's still pain for a few days, maybe even up to a couple of weeks after. There's still a bit of pain, isn't there? You know, it doesn't just stop and disappear. So I wasn't happy about that. So it took me a few days to actually warm to her. And then I had trouble breastfeeding. Felt like there was no milk coming out. And it was hurting when you're not used to a child pulling hard on your breast. It's kind of a bit of a shock. And I tried for the first month or so. And then when it got to 6 weeks, I just thought, you know what? I'm going to stop breastfeeding. I can't do this. And the thing is, during that first week, we started to do the bottle as well. So we were doing the bottle and breast. And I just felt, you know, thank goodness for that, because that baby probably wouldn't have got much food. Because when you're in pain, it's hard to really properly breastfeed. But anyway, I was about to stop at 6 weeks, and then all of a sudden it just got easier. I wasn't feeling any pain anymore. I was like, oh, you know, it's quite a shock. And in fact, it actually began to feel enjoyable. You're feeling closer to the baby, and you feel no pain, and you can feel that you're giving her the best thing. So then I began to breastfeed more, and the bottle was less, and then it became 50-50. So yeah, after the first few days, I would say I began to bond with the baby, but it did feel a little bit odd, to be honest. I remember when I took the child when me and my husband took the child to church for the first time, I felt a bit weird walking in church with a child. I was like, this is not like me. I'm not usually the one that rushes over to hold people's babies, and now I have a child. It felt a little bit odd. And I was sitting down for not longer than about 2-3 minutes, and then there's a lady in our church called Carol Edwards. She came over and took the baby, and she had the baby for the rest of the service. I was like, oh, it's that, you know? Because it felt strange. It just felt strange. It took me a while to get used to the fact that here I was for so long, not having a child. And in fact, when I had told people I was pregnant, everybody was shocked. You know,
we couldn't believe it. We were literally shocked. We literally could not believe it that it was true. You do remember, yeah? It was like,
that's weird, isn't it? You know, because I suppose we were kind of two independent professional people. I'd never appeared to have any kind of sense of, maternal instinct. So it's kind of a shock for everybody, as well as for me, I've got to say.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was my first month. But I've got to say also, after that first week, I just began to really enjoy the fact that we had a child, and I really began to love it. And I remember somebody saying to us, you two are like you're walking on air, because, it's like you've got a glow about you, the fact you have a child. And I was just so happy that, that I'd listened to my husband and decided that, yes, we were going to have a child now, rather than going my own sweet way. I probably would have been about 40 before I eventually had one. But yeah, I began to bond and began to get used to the idea. And loved it, absolutely loved it. And when I had my second child, once again, it was just lovely to have a baby. There were things that were going on around that time, but she was like a comfort. She was like a comfort blanket. And when I was going through my stress, and I'd go and pick her up from the nursery or from school, her smile, her laughter would just be like a healing to me. So it's just beautiful. It's beautiful. So those are the early years with children. Right, I'm gonna just cover one more area now. Siblings. Yeah. When you had the second and or the third, I think Victoria, you're the one who's had 3. Myself and Eve have had 2. And the funny thing is, as all 3 of us have had girls, they're all girls that we've got. None of us have boys. Yeah. So siblings, and how did the siblings cope with each other?
I think that's an interesting one. I mean, I also had miscarried as well the first time. I had a miscarriage. Then I had my first. Then I had my second. Then I terminated after that. And then I had so I've had, I think, 4 pregnancies all in all. And I'm not ashamed of anything. So Chantal and Monique were 1 year between them. So that was it. That's how they knew each other. Just 1 year between each other. And Monique was always seen as the youngest because she was the youngest. And then my oldest, always kind of looked at her. They always were 2, but they argued like cat and dog. But they were absolutely bonded, if that makes sense. So they're absolutely, and so there was no kind of don't like her, don't like their father's mixed race. So one was his colouring, one was my colouring. So I mean, one was so Monique was born and she looked Chinese, because his mother is their grandmother is their great grandmother is Chinese Jamaican. So she looked like that. So when she looked like that, she still has the kind of very Chinese eyes, and that's what she looked like. And Chantal looks like her dad, but has my colouring. And Monique looks like me and has my colouring. So as her colour, his colouring. So those were really good. And then of course when Charlotte was born, which was a long time later with a different man, or different husband, let's use those words, and he her position had moved from being third, youngest, to the middle. So there's a lot of discussion around that. You have to kind of work through that and talk about it and all that type of stuff as well, because whereas you've got 1 and 2, and then you've got number 3, and so number 2 becomes number 2 is the middle one. That's a different. So the first gets attention and the third gets attention, but the middle doesn't get so much attention. So it's it's working through all of that. Yeah, it's a big thing. It's a big thing. But yeah, I mean, I think that the girls are very close. I mean, the oldest one was very connected to the youngest one at the beginning, and then later on it switched, so the middle one became very close to the youngest one, but the youngest one is able to have both of them as their, all different skills from both of them. Yeah, the youngest one is 6 foot plus.
Wow.
Yep. The oldest, yeah, so the oldest one is 5'11", and the second one is 5'10". Yeah. The oldest 2, big thing about, I never made anything because I didn't live in London, so I didn't get involved with all of the stuff of colorism or hair and all this kind of stuff. Where I lived, 1 drop and you were just you were an N-word. So there was no discussion about hair and all that type of stuff, or complexion or anything like that. So siblings, I think I think there was a lot of jostling, but they got on. I think they got on really well. There was a bit of a box up a couple of weeks ago when the oldest and the youngest got into a bit of a punch up, but
Did you split them up then?
I was just about to start a Zoom call at 8:30 in the morning. I heard all this shouting and screaming, and I went downstairs thinking, what's going on with you lot? But yes. But that's the kind of situation we're in, isn't it? It's like a time bomb going on in the house. I mean, the house is big enough, but it's just
yeah, and especially when you can't really go anywhere, then tempers will get set off sometimes.
Well, you got a teenager, haven't you? I've got a teenager and I've got 2 adults, and everybody's, you know, it's all of that, but it's all good. I mean, I would say I'm very proud of them. So they all jostled, but they're okay. Yeah. So it's all 3 girls. The best time to move out the way is when it's hormonal.
Yeah, I'm telling you.
Just move out the way quickly.
Oh my goodness. Those PMTs, I tell you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. You just say, good morning, Dawn. How are you today? What's good about it? Okay.
I mean, I strangely enough, I wanted a boy first. I don't know how I was going to make that happen, but I wanted a boy first. And
no tablets for that.
I wasn't, sorry?
There's no tablets for that.
Exactly.
I don't know if I ever told my oldest daughter this, but I actually didn't. This is another story. I'm not going to go into the background about what didn't happen. But I didn't have a scan, but that's another story. I won't raise that here. I didn't have a scan because let's just say somebody didn't want me to have one, so I didn't have one. So I didn't know what I was having. And also I didn't know the size of it because of the number of scans along the way until it got to near the time of birth was going to happen. And this new midwife I'd never seen before felt and said, oh, there's a big baby in there. I was like, is it? I had no idea how big it was. But I'd actually bought, when I went shopping, very presumptuous of me, I bought a blue baby grow, thinking, well, I think I'm having a boy. So I bought a blue baby grow, had it in the cupboard. And when I brought my daughter home, I actually said, there's that blue baby grow in the cupboard, so I'm going to put her in it. So I did. I put her in a blue baby grow. You know that it's very pink.
Why not?
She looked lovely in it. So I really had to rejig my mind. Because for me, I thought, and I know there's no rationality to it. I can't rationalize it any kind of way, but I thought it'd be nice when I have my first child, it's a boy, and then he can protect and look after any children that come afterwards. Not that necessarily happens, but that was what was in my mind. That's why I wanted the boy first, to protect, the rest that came. Anyway, I had my daughter, and she's 33 this year, and then I had 12 years later, I had my youngest one. So the sibling thing is that there's such a big gap, 12 years between them. It's a big gap. So it can literally go one way or another. It can be really good, and the older one is very motherly and very caring, and the little one receives it, and that goes well. Or it can go the other way, where the older one may not be that interested in the little one, or maybe there are, and the little one doesn't want any of it. So I kind of had the third option where my older daughter was very caring, and then as my younger one grew a bit older, she was really having this why is she the boss of me thing. So I remember one day I think this is I mean, they love each other now and they're very good together, but one day, I was in my room, and all along they've had these little niggles and arguments and whatever it is, and my little one comes in, I think it's about 3 or 4, and she just came straight up me and just pointed over at a sister. A sister was about, sister's about 16 then, pointed over there and said, do I have to do what she says, pointing over to her sister who's like 16, and just do what she says, like that. And I just said, yes, you do. So go on downstairs and do whatever she told you to do. I don't know what it was. And I thought, my goodness me, who's this little child think that she is? Because actually, I saw her older sister as being not an adult, but almost an adult, and part of the whole caring thing. But this little child was, I was quite independent. I came out of the womb independent. That's me. But she was like 100 times more independent than any child that I've ever come across in my whole life. And then it was like, serves me right for being so independent, want to do my own thing. Now I have another child the same. But it did cause certain tensions between them. And there have been these endless, oh, she's breathing on me, she's breathing at me, and can you tell her, mom, to stop? All those kind of things you see on cartoons, and that, tell her to stop breathing at me, tell her to stop looking at me, all these things were going on. But I think the thing is that I realized underneath it all was this, affection. There was love. I never saw them fight. I never saw them get to a scrap or anything like that, because I scrapped with my sister. Oh yes, I did a lot. My sister, 2.5 years older than me. I scrapped a lot. She'd wind me up. I'd jump on her, fight, all of that, you know. But I didn't see any of that between them. You know, the tensions were there. And my oldest daughter was very caring. She looked after her. But one thing she did say to me, my oldest daughter, when she was a teenager and saw this young child, she said, when she saw how much it took, and I was kind of glad for this because it's like a reality bites kind of thing. When she saw what it took, she said, to raise a baby, you know, all the way through, she said, Mum, I'm not going to have a baby early. I'm not going to have a child early. And she hasn't done, but she said, no, I'm not. I'm going to, you know, she's going to wait. We did get to the point then a few years back when it was like, I don't think I want any, because she's a teacher. So it seems to vary from one to another. Don't they, Dawn? Vary from one to another. Yes, I do want some. No, I don't want some. And I guess it's around being kids all the time. But, you know, that thing where she just said, in a very mature way, I was just going to wait because I can see what it takes. I felt as a sibling saying that about another sibling, just in a caring way and understanding how much it takes to raise a child. I was very proud of her at that moment. So, you know, they have different personalities. That's another thing. Yes. And let's be honest now, because this is an honest discussion. People turn around, and I did have that thing where I can't remember which one, but I think it was the youngest, had this thing where she kind of felt that I loved the older one more than I loved the younger one. And they kind of had that feeling, though I know I didn't show anything like that towards either of them. I just did to myself, and I would say to them as well, I would say, let's be honest, there's just something about your kids. They've got different personalities. You may gravitate to find one easier to talk to than you might find the other one. It's not anything to do with love. It's not anything to do with acceptance. It's just that personalities, some of them you'll find with one child, it's easier to vibe with that child and talk to them. And it may take more effort with another one. So it's not a love thing. And I started to say this thing, you know, I love you. And I said, I love you both equally, because I had to start saying that and quantified it that way, so that my youngest one didn't think that I was favoring the older one, but my love was equal for both of them. So that's the kind of sibling thing that I got into that I never expected. But I love my children equally. You know, I do love them equally, and I can say that without feeling anything about it that I'm pretending. I love them equally. But I do think with kids, and I do think that's probably what some kids, siblings see, that you can vibe with one differently than the other in terms of how you talk and relate to them. That's a fact, I think.
And I think it's interesting that children do go up to be different. They have different personalities. I find it odd sometimes. I'm like, how did this happen? They grew up in the same home. They had the same experiences. I know that they went to different schools and had different friends, but yet they can be so different. It's really odd. And that causes sibling rivalry sometimes. That causes arguments. And that's certainly something that we've had in our home, where the younger one is disrespecting the elder one, and the elder one is like, oh, she doesn't do what I tell her to do. And we had this when the younger one was a child and the elder one was a teenager, you know, and I suppose the elder one felt that she was a boss. Well, the younger one wasn't happy about that, and unfortunately, you know, they had various fights, you know, and arguments and fights, physical fights, and I don't think the younger one has ever got over that, you know. They're still carrying their baggage, and one tends to be very forgiving and forgets things and moves on, and the other one holds on to it for dear life, you know. She probably gets that from her grandmother, you know, traits that travel down the generations. But it's been a pleasure to see the differences. And it was also a pleasure to see that when the younger one was a baby, how the older one would mother her. She wanted to be the one that took her out, that would hold her. And I think that's a good thing also, when you involve the elder one with the younger one, because you know that when you get visitors at the time of the new baby, everybody's focused on the elder one, on the younger one, but the elder one would want to hold the baby so that you're focusing on them both. You know, that was her trick. and it worked well for them. But you know, I'm grateful that they're healthy, they're well, they're both bright, they're both ambitious, they're both working hard for whatever their respective professions are going to be. And I think it's a blessing to have children. And I think as we've spoken today, we've given our honest experiences of motherhood, from before motherhood right through to, you know, when the child is much older. And just want to encourage mothers to continue doing what you're doing. And sometimes it won't be easier. You've got to know that. Sometimes there will be tears, your tears, because it's hard, you know, and you don't always get the support that you want, you know, whether it's from a husband, a partner. I feel sorry for those people that took completely on their own, you know, mother and child and no help. That's hard. That's hard, you know, and you've got to be the only one that gets up at night to do the feeding, the only one that changes the nappies, the only one that takes the child out. I can imagine that must be a nightmare.
That's me, Dawn.
Really. Oh, that's hard. And,
It's life.
And we've got to sympathize with those mothers and
I was like that.
Hope that they find friends around them or make new friends, new mothers, because there are always new mothers around a neighborhood. You know, you're pushing a pram, you're seeing somebody else pushing a pram, start talking, say hi, say hello, and you never know, you might be able to arrange an hour off while they help look after your child or help take the child to school or something.
I think one of the things I'd like to say is that, oh, sorry, Eve, did you want to go say something?
Sorry.
No. I was going to say one of the best things, I think, you said best motherhood experiences. What's the time? Oh, I've got 3 minutes. Was that I had a good group of women who had children at the same time with Charlotte, which is my youngest. And some of them which are on TV, she's a TV presenter and everything, and some others which are fashion buyers. And there's 8 of us in a group. And we've been together with my youngest, and they're now all of their kids are 16, coming up to 17, and we still know each other. That's been a really good network.
That's good.
Good network, and they're a mixture of mostly Black mothers, but we've also got some white mothers in that group as well. And the thing is, they were all professional, so they're all going back to work. They're all in top jobs. Yeah. And so I was part of that group, which was very nice. Even though I didn't live in South London, I knew them, and so that was actually quite nice. So that's been one of my best experiences of motherhood.
Okay.
I think also I'd say, Dawn, just to add on as a final point for me, 2 points. First is the church network. The church we were part of had many women of my age, our age, didn't they? So, you know, who were going through the same things at the same time, and we had children of similar ages, and they were of different age groups as well, even though we might have children of a similar age, especially my older one, for that church. But that was the learning point. That was the point where we could talk to each other, and, you know, they'd share clothes with you and said, oh, we have these items of clothing and talk about this, come round, you know, have a little play date, whatever it is, talk about what you want to talk about. That was actually really good. So I'm so thankful for that church group that we're part of, in that kind of way. But also I'd say, this is what I did. So I could sound a bit odd, but I just want to say anyways, that as a mother, I can't speak for fathers. I'm not a guy. I can't speak for fathers, and I'm sure they have similar things in their own ways. That, you know, I dreamt big for my oldest daughter from the time that she was born. I dreamt big for her, and I felt the same for my youngest. And even though they had completely different personalities, for my, I think I've said this in another group somewhere else, is that for my oldest, you know, from the time that she was a toddler, I used to say in her ear as she was going to sleep, I used to say, when you get older, you're going to go to university, and you're going to definitely go to university. I used to say that every time, over and over and over and over and over, like an earworm. Yeah, I put my hands up. I put my hands up. I said it over and over and over and over to him while she was sleeping. That's why I used to say, I mean, she did go to university, did very well. You know, she did a master's degree, she's doing very well now. She did. My youngest one, when I started to trigger her personality, as she was starting to emerge from being a baby to a toddler baby, I just said to myself, this is not going to work with this one, because this one owns herself completely and she's just got a different kind of vibe. So I didn't do that with her, because I could see the characters were very, 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 very different. But I still dreamt big for her, and I still would talk to her as well about things that I'd hoped to see her achieve over time. Of course, she had some health issues, so we had to work with that and we found out more about them. But the thing that I would say to mothers, that don't let the beginning dictate your feeling through the whole journey. Dream big for your child. Speak life into your child. Uphold your child. Let them feel your love in the best way you know how, no matter how you were brought up. And let them know who you are as a person, as a woman, and that as you respect yourself, let them see respect. Let them see you respecting yourself, whether it's they're a woman or a man as a child, or girl or boy, whichever one. Let them see you respecting yourself, because children are watching us, mothers, and you can watch fathers too, but certainly children are watching us. So let them see the best of who we are, even though that might not be every day, but we're putting the best of who we are into them, and that's the most important thing.
Okay, thank you so much, ladies, for sharing your very interesting journeys into motherhood. I hope it's useful for somebody who's listening, and if we help and comfort even one person, then it's worthwhile doing this. Thank you. We will talk another time, another topic, another day. See you guys. Bye.
This work is by Tomlin, who is a music historian, artist, and art teacher.